morning, everyone. I think everyone's getting all settled. Thank you again for coming out to our second PFA General Meeting of the year. I'm Jerry Moore, and along with Sarah Vreda, I'm co-president of the PFA. And before we get started, we just have one small order of business to take care of to approve the minutes from September's general meeting. So may I have a motion to approve the minutes? Sarah, can I have a second? Patty, all in favor? Okay, the minutes have been approved. Today's talk is entitled, Are You Smarter Than Your Cell Phone? And so I wanted to introduce our principal, Bill Egan, and he's going to share some thoughts on how we came up with the topic and how we broached the subject.
Thanks, Jerry. Well, thank you all for coming. This is probably one of the more important topics that we could be discussing, really, as a families and as a school. I have a senior myself in high school, and navigating social media use and it's been tricky, for me, even as a school principal, how to do that. There's so much that goes into, you want to raise your kids to be independent, to be able to use tools, but also making sure it doesn't impact them negatively, So for me, I know I've had plenty of conversations along the way where we monitor our daughter's screen time. That was a choice for us. And when it impacted her, we felt like in the negative ways, we would limit use. But it's also interesting because there's so much that you want to try and have your kids become independent and all that, but you want to hope that they're doing things the right way. And I could tell you, one, as a parent, and two, as a school principal, it's not always the case. There are plenty of things I see online that are not awesome. It could be just conversations that kids sometimes have with each other. It could be some of the things they're looking at. So I do think this is a really important topic, one that kind of impacts their social and emotional health. So for me, I know my daughter had some social issues with some friends, and she kind of got separated from them. But then was the whole thing of seeing what they're doing on Instagram or on TikTok or on different things, and that also has its own difficulties. And it's also difficult because every family navigates this journey through their own personal choices, right? They all make their own decisions on how much freedom they want to give their kids and all that. But I think it's important that we have experts come in and be able to talk to us a little bit, guide us some, and then we make our decisions that we need to as families too. Anyway, that's really kind of the root of where we're at. We also had a school climate survey that was done last year, and there was no negative ratings, but there was neutral ratings in a couple of areas. And one of those areas was social media. And part of it was not necessarily knowing enough about it from a family lens. And even from kids about some of the interactions between kids, they weren't necessarily sure how to deal with some of that. So I thought it was an important topic that we kind of explored together. I think we're constantly learning. But there's no doubt that, since, I'll let the experts talk about this, but since 2007, when the iPhone came out, we see a rise in depression amongst teenagers. I think adults struggle in their own ways too. But at the same token, there's no doubt that that's had an impact on kids. I think this is a really, really important topic and one that we'll continue to learn together about and explore. So I just want to thank you, Jerry, for letting me kind of open that up. So thanks.
Thank you, Bill. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Frank Bartolomeo. He is a local psychotherapist with over 30 years of experience in the field of mental and behavioral health with a focus on adolescents and emerging adults. He is a frequent speaker and trainer in Fairfield County and at national conferences. Currently, he serves as a senior clinical advisor for adolescent services at and provides group therapy at Stewart House for adults at Silver Hill Hospital. He also has a private practice in Wilton. And joining him today is Maureen Aziel. Education and Program Manager for New Canaan Cares, who, when Dr. Frank is finished speaking, she's going to provide some additional resources and tools to aid you in your family discussions. And Judy Phillips, the Executive Director of CARES, is also here. So please extend a warm welcome to Dr. Frank.
Turn it on for you. There you go.
Morning. Just so I can kind of get to know you as an audience, can I have a show of hands? How many of you have a high schooler? Makes sense. How many of you have a tween, middle schooler? How many of you have a grader? Okay. How many of you have ever felt that this social media thing is just too big to get your head around? All right. And how many of you have ever felt totally at a loss of how to manage some of this? Good. So I'm putting myself in this category because I don't know if you've ever had this experience I've had when I've listened to parenting experts. Sometimes I walk away feeling kind of yucky, and because often they make things sound so easy. And so what I want to say to you is I'm in this with you too. And I'm struggling to find a way to help my children and myself deal with kind of a new world. So there's no judgment here, and I'm in this with you. You know, what I wanted to say is that any time there has been a new technological advance, there is usually a response of consternation. So it's kind of funny, actually, but if you look at the invention of the printing press, there was a great deal of reaction to that. Anytime there's been a new technological advance and a previous generation hasn't had exposure to it, we have a reaction. Apparently there's a major reaction when coffee was brought over to Europe. That's not even an invention. There was a major reaction to the invention of the light bulb, cars, television, radio. Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about us that when there's something new that comes in? Yeah, uncertainty, and there's a loss. So one of the major reactions is a loss of our world paradigm. And one, we have anxiety that we don't have the skills to kind of keep up with it. And it also represents a loss. Right? So and then it's very easy to be nostalgic. So I'm a child of the 70s and early 80s. And I think, oh gosh, I'm so happy I didn't have the internet. I didn't have this, I didn't have that. It's very easy to do that. But then I think about, oh, well, during the 70s and 80s, everyone was always smacking us. Parents were smacking us. Teachers were smacking us. Coaches were smacking us.
I get fired.
Exactly. That wasn't so great. When I was in college and my first years of graduate school, and I had to use the Dewey Decimal System to track down articles, when I had to go through libraries and go through stacks and stacks of journals to find an article, that wasn't so great. So again, it's very easy for us to fall into the nostalgia, but recognizing that something has changed about our world, right? These phones are also, they're surveillance systems, right? Never before in the history have children been so monitored as they have now. And when I think the freedom we had in the 70s and 80s, I couldn't imagine being surveilled in the way that kids are now. Or having parents get onto a phone and check my grades? No way, right? So kids are living under this too. So, you know, we're first of all, no one came here for a lecture today, correct? Is that my understanding? Good, because my understanding is that really what we want to do today is really practice, you know, what I might call deep parenting or deep communication. So you all have had the facts, you know about brain development, adolescence, blah, 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 blah. And your children have been saturated with information about adolescent brain development. And they don't like to be lectured to either. So first tip, don't lecture. they're going to just tune you right out. And unfortunately, education in itself has never really led to kind of behavior change. For years and years, people knew the effects of cigarette smoking. That didn't stop a lot of people from smoking. So we often have a belief, oh, if you just get kind of the rationale behind it, it'll stop. Some deeper brain processes are at work here. So I'd like to just try a little thought experiment with you right now, and I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to mentally record your first reaction, and then I'm going to want you to be honest about it. So the question is, or the request of you is, during the course of this talk, I'm asking that no one look at their phone. As one is in someone's hand. So let me hear some initial responses to that. And be honest, please. There's no way.
I wish I wore my watch.
Ah. Okay, so we...
Okay, except I'm taking notes on this today.
Of course, right? I'm checking email, right? So also what I want to say to you, go ahead.
I was like, oh, I wasn't going to look at it anyway. This is like the spa day right now.
Okay. So what I'm going to say to you next, and this is going to be something that's going to be hard to look at, adults are as equally attached to their phones as your adolescents. Right? Look at the principal. To call him up. Look at him right here, right? Right? We have to look at that because what we do says much more than what we say. And the research indicates that adults are checking their phones every 4 minutes. And of course, we have good rationales. I got to check my email. I got to find out if my kid is okay. So we have to look at ourselves. And so we are not immune to what's happening. Those phones are what I call a dopamine delivery device. Okay? The people who've developed some of these social media, they've worked with neuroscientists, they know what gets us. So I want you to tune into that because, we often give advice that we're not using ourselves. Have you noticed that? We give lots of advice to our children and other people that we're not really using ourselves. So here, take this advice, I'm not using it.
It's called parenting.
Right, exactly. And your kids see through that. So it also gives you a point of connection and empathy with them. That you're struggling with the same thing. And that we have to help each other sort this out. So don't lecture. I was just talking to a kid in the hospital yesterday, and she said, she was so frustrated. She said, my mom turns every conversation into a life lesson. I wish she would just have a freaking conversation with me. Those were her words. So what I want to talk to you about, and I'm not going to do all the work today, by the way. So I'm going to ask you to do some work. I'm going to talk about kind of, at any given time, there are two levels of communication. There's what we're saying and what we're communicating. Two different things. Guess which is more powerful? Nonverbal communication is much more powerful than what we say. And part of that has to do with how we evolved as mammals. Any of you have pets? Your pets have a sense of how you feel? So mammals developed a way of communicating with one another, and we're mammals, brain to brain. It's an older brain. What came around the last part of our brain that came up was this sort of talking brain. So I'm going to talk to you really about sort of that deeper level of communication. Because we've all had the experience of someone saying something but having a totally incongruous mood with it. I was just doing, yes?
But
Right. So before we get into problem solving, and I'm happy to ask questions, but let's try to save that for the end, because there'll be a lot of, what I want to try to focus on today are common difficulties that we're having, and then we can kind of get into kind of unique circumstances. So I was doing couples therapy with somebody on Monday night, and the husband was saying all the right things. I want to be supportive to you. I love you. And something felt totally incongruous to what he was saying. The spouse was picking it up, I was picking it up. And really what was happening is inside, his heart was kind of closed. He was kind of detached, but he was saying certain things. So that's what I mean by this different level of communication. So today we're gonna practice. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna create a generic New Canaan parent. And since there are mostly moms here today, I suggest that we create a mom together. So, how old is this mom?
40.
Okay. And how many children? Okay. Ages? We need one teenager.
16, 12, and 6.
Okay. And let's give her a name that no one could possibly have here. Gertrude. That is so strange, my friend, because there's something called tele right there, because I was thinking of the same name. So here's Gertrude, 40 years old, and has 3 children. She married, divorced, separated. Pick one. Married. Okay. How's the quality of her marriage? Because you might notice that sometimes we all have different parenting styles, and sometimes we're not on the same page with our spouse about some of this stuff. Right? You know what I'm talking about? All right. So Maureen, I'm going to ask you to sit up here as Gertrude. I'm not going to ask you to do anything. We just need you as a kind of a placeholder. Gertrude has worries and anxieties about, how old is her, what was it, 16-year-old, male or female? Okay. And what's her name?
Laura.
Any Lauras in here? Okay. So she has concerns about her daughter, Laura, and social media. So what I'm going to ask people to do, I want you to try to imagine and think about, imagine what Gertrude is thinking and feeling about this. What are her fears? And I'll have people come up one at a time and just sort of stand here and say, I feel, and then Gertrude will get to say whether that's true. All right, so I'm not doing all the work, so if you have a sense of what Gertrude might be worried about, come on up. We'll just keep it short as a sentence. I'm worried about,
I'm worried about the camera on my daughter's phone.
particularly, just be a little more specific.
Any images that might be taken or shared.
Anyone else? Come on up.
I'm worried about bullying.
What else? There's a lot of people who came here for talk, so I know that you have anxieties. And we're only talking about Gertrude's. Anyone else?
I'm worried about my daughter's feeling left out.
I'm worried about my daughter leaving out others.
I'm worried about the exposure to mature content.
We might call that porn.
Not necessarily,
Okay.
no. I'm worried about my child's body image or her perception.
We're going to get the principal up too. He can imagine what it's like to be Gertrude.
I'm worried about my boy's safety.
Yeah, Laura's safety. Yep. Come on, principal. Come on up. You can feel your way into Gertrude, which she's worried about.
I'm worried about whether my daughter's safe.
And the feeling that comes with that is fear. A couple more.
I'm worried about my daughter not being able to sleep and not being able to turn everything off at some point.
Do you want to take a photo with the phone? Just teasing.
I'm worried about that my awkward, easygoing daughter is using it to hide from everyone else and isolate herself.
I'm worried about my daughter being constantly distracted and not living in the present.
Yeah, that's a big one. That we're not being present to our lives. I drive by playgrounds and I see, I think they're moms, I mean, they could be nannies. Their children are playing and they're stuck to their phones. Yeah.
I'm worried about my daughter spending too much time on the phone and not doing her homework, other sports and playing.
I think we've got it. Oh, you got one? Come on in.
I'm worried about the negative influence that social media will have on my kids and my daughter.
So, in deep parenting, we have to be in touch with what's happening with us first. Right? So, any conversation you have with your child, guess what's happening to your nervous system? What's the effect of fear on the nervous system? What's that? Yeah, so we are hardwired to try to protect people we love. It's an innate mammalian response. And it evolved so that we could protect our offspring from predators. So we will often respond, but the old brain doesn't really know sometimes the difference between an imminent risk of being eaten versus an imagined worry. But our nervous systems will react the same way. So this is what we're coming into these conversations with. And that's important to be tuned into because that's going to affect how you communicate. Okay. So now we need Laura up here. So Laura is 16, and a couple adjectives to describe her. Athletic.
Good kid.
Smart. What was it? What is it? Diligent. Driven. Kind.
Stubborn.
Stubborn. So, where's Judy? Judy, would you come up and meet Laura for a moment? I just want to share that, incidentally, when I ask kids at the hospital, in our program that's 30 days, and they're away from their phones, if they think that social media can be negative, they universally say yes. So they're aware. So here's Laura, and what social media platforms is she on? TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. Facebook is old school now. You know that? Okay. None of the kids are on Facebook anymore. Who can imagine what Laura feels about her phone and her social media?
Connects her to her friends.
Most valuable thing.
This is how I connect to my friends. What else? If I'm not checking it, I'm missing out.
That's how you keep up with your friends. Stay.
This is how I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Why wasn't I included?
How come I didn't get enough likes?
I want the newest model or gadget or whatever is going on, as some of our friends have.
She might also be thinking, how do I ensure that my parents can't get a peek into what I'm writing and communicating with my friends? This is my private space. How do I make sure my parents don't get a look into my psyche and my social relationships? All right, so let's come up with a situation where Gertrude is, what's the situation that Gertrude's worried about? With respect to Laura. We need a situation. Apply to social media.
Others are talking about an incident at a party and in relation to a boy, which should have been private connections between two people. Now others are talking about even if it's not true.
Is that maybe something that people can relate to? So, something occurs at a party, and you be more specific. She and this boy hook up, or there's rumors that she's hooked.
Let's say they didn't hook up, but the rumors are they did.
Okay. All right. So, how does mom find out about this? Another mom.
Betsy.
She found out from Betsy. So, Gertrude, where might you have this conversation with Laura? You've just found out from another mom on the down low, probably from a text, that people are talking about what Laura did at this party. So where are you going to have this conversation?
Kitchen.
In the kitchen. All right. So I want you two to turn your chairs. Would you be facing each other in the kitchen? Or would you be doing this over breakfast? How would we do this? All right. Okay. So you're going to have a serious conversation. Is that right? So, would you turn your chairs and face each other, please? All right. Who can imagine Gertrude has been thinking about this, and she's decided she's going to ask her daughter to have a conversation about this. Who can imagine, I guess we don't have to get into this, who can imagine what Gertrude is feeling before she even has this conversation, before she goes down in the kitchen?
Nervous.
Nervous. Nervous about what?
Response. How she responds.
How Laura's going to respond. What else?
What's true and what's not.
How's she feeling about the rumors, potential rumors? She got a potentially I'm going to assume that they're saying it's something sexual about it. She just got a peek into the potential sexual life of her adolescent daughter. Can any of us imagine in our own adolescence what that would be like? If our parents got a look into what we did or do with our boyfriend or girlfriend. What might Laura be feeling?
It's mortifying.
Humiliation. Mortified. So, let's hear you say, Laura, we're going to have a conversation. You've just come into the kitchen.
Laura has something to talk to you about.
Who can imagine in response to that, was it a question or statement? There's something we need to talk about. Is that a question or statement? Who can imagine what's happening inside of Laura when she hears, we're going to have a conversation?
Panic.
Hannah? Am I in trouble? So this is what's happening in Laura's nervous system. Mom's nervous and scared. She's scared. You know what happens to two nervous systems that are frightened? They can't let go well. All right, guys, we're going to start operating a different part of our brain and physiology. You're acting as if she was about to be eaten by a larger mammal, a predator. That's what's happening inside of you. Your heart's probably beating fast. She now thinks, I'm in trouble. What else might she be thinking in response to I'm in trouble?
Well, she's also dealing with what's already going on.
Ah, she's got her own stuff going on. So what might she be feeling about that?
Worried.
What?
Worried.
She has her own worry. Anxious. Angry. And she thinks mom doesn't know what it is. So let's practice, and we're going to take turns. Let's practice how those conversations are going to go. All right? So, have that question again? Say that again. There's something we need to talk about. Laura, what's your response to that?
Now what?
She might be thinking, oh shit. So, you can sit down and another Gertrude. And what we're going to do first is I want you to show us the least skillful way that you could do this conversation. All right, so I don't want you to show an effective way. Show us the least effective way to have this conversation. Come on up. Show me the least effective thing you could do with this conversation. Or one of them.
I just got a text from somebody. You want to tell me what happened on Saturday night?
Oh, stay there. Stay there. You're Gertrude now. You sit down. I need another Laura. I need another Laura. Come on up. Just repeat that again in the same way that you did. Now pay attention to the tone.
I just got a text from someone this morning. You want to tell me what happened on Saturday night?
So someone else is sitting behind the chair. What might Laura really be thinking and feeling? Oh no. Her heart's so beating. What's coming?
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Hold on one second.
I'm sorry.
So my question is, if it didn't happen, it's kind of even more complex because she doesn't even know what she's talking about.
Yes.
Well, she knows that people are talking and saying things happened.
Yeah.
She knows that.
But she doesn't know what she knows.
She doesn't know what she knows.
See, and I'm thinking she's also probably responding with, okay, like, my whole world is against me. Like, all of my friends are talking about me, and now my mother's on top of me for something I didn't.
She doesn't even know what it is yet. So let's hear what that is.
Oh, I have to go further?
Yeah. As a Gertrude.
As the bad picture.
As the, yeah.
Ineffective.
Well, you're already starting off ineffective. So you're already ramped up her nervous system. And by the way, when our nervous system goes up, this part of our brain goes offline.
Really? Did something happen with Brian on Saturday night at the party?
Come up behind the chair, Laura. Now what is Laura thinking and feeling inside? What does she know? And what am I going to have to reveal? Right? Heart's pounding. Sometimes when we're afraid, we respond with a secondary emotion called anger. Maybe you want to hit her with that. Come down the chair and let's hit her.
I deserve it.
When sometimes we're afraid, the secondary emotion, without even awareness, comes up is anger and defense. Show your least effective response to Mom Gertrude.
It's not even your business
How about this? Mom, can't you mind your own business? What's going to happen inside of Mom?
Mom's gonna get a little pissed off.
Mom's going to get pissed off. So, pissed off Mom, let's hear what you're going to say in response to that.
Actually, it is my business. You're still living under my roof and you're under the age of 18.
How many of you have said this? You want to keep going? Should we get another Laura? So let's see the face. Now here's the nonverbal. You see that? She did an eye roll and Mom, how do you react when that happens? Now what she's thinking? Now she's disrespecting me. This can't happen. Right? Now let's hear what you say to that. You just saw the face.
Do you want us to sit down with Dad, too?
Here come the big guns. Now poor Laura, her dad might be involved and get a peek into her potential sexual life. How wonderful is that? Are you going to respond to that? Dad's coming. Are you going to respond? Dad, just bring me in, Dad.
You can curse.
In this role play, you can curse. We want to be real here.
We'll beep out the footage.
That's that?
I said we'll beep out the footage.
Right, exactly.
Really? I mean, what about my privacy? Do you respect anything?
Hold on. Let me get the mom here. Someone switch out. Tag out. Someone else come in. Come on in. So you're going to respond. You're going to ask, your truth, this is going on. What about my privacy?
What about my privacy? Is anything protected?
How's Laura going to respond?
No.
She's giving up that phone?
Or she's smart and she did
Gripping it
everything
tight
that's here.
now.
But remember, she doesn't even know her mom found this out. She only found it out from another nosy mom who texted her about what she's hearing. Let's hear that. What are you going to say? She wants your phone. Fair. Good. Laura, come up behind again. When we step behind this, you're going to tell us what's happening. What you're not saying. What's Laura not saying in this conversation in response to that?
This is bullshit. No way. She didn't even know anything.
There's no way she's getting my phone.
Nothing's wrong. I didn't do anything.
Right.
You always take my phone. It's the first thing you say. I mean,
What's the emotion that comes up for us when we feel embarrassed or humiliated? And defensiveness. And how sometimes we deal with the experience of shame. We all know this. How do we deal with the experience of shame? Feeling.
Sometimes we put it on the other person. We deflect.
How about run out of the room?
Storm.
Storm. So you're going to show us the storm out of the room. You're relieved? Let's go. Let's hear that again. I want to see your phone. Now you can sit in the chair. We're still having the conversation now. I want to see your phone.
well, you don't trust me now.
Yeah, respond.
Well, you've not given me a lot of reasons to trust you.
I'm sick of it.
All right, how do you have this conversation? Or something similar to this? I'm not really.
My daughter was 4 when she started this.
Okay. So now we're going to practice a different approach. Okay, so you can have a seat. You want to stay as Laura? Are you enjoying it?
No.
I mean, every chance I get to play an adolescent, I jump in. Because it's fun.
I was a door slammer in my day.
You were?
Yes.
Okay.
It was by usually my dad.
Okay.
Storm off.
All right. Okay, so now, tuning into ourselves. I'm anxious. I'm scared. I don't know how to approach this conversation. What's the first thing we have to do?
Bring it down a notch.
What's that?
Calm it down.
We have to calm our own nervous system down, which is not easy to do. Because what's happening is that it's a very visceral experience. So, how might you do that?
Keep breathing.
Okay.
Wait, take a minute.
Take a minute. All right.
Go get that.
That's going to be a disaster. I hope you've never been set up that way.
No,
All right.
not too.
Okay.
You could also include the child in the solution. What do you think we should do about this?
Oh, why not? Oh, it's you again. You're going to come up as Gertrude. Come on up. You get to now role reverse. And what's good about this is now you know at a deep level what her reaction might be. Is that a great thing? Because now you can tune into that. So before this conversation's happened, you've taken a breath, you've regulated your own nervous system, you have some empathy, what Laura might experience. Okay? I need a Laura. Now we're going to practice potentially a more skillful way to approach this. Okay? You don't have to come up with it. Unless you feel like you've got something. All right. So any ideas how we might approach this differently? Yep.
From my own experience, I would say, you know what, I'm
Come on up in the chair. Reverse out, tag out.
I would just,
No, do it. Let's see it.
I'm sorry that I approached you that way.
No, you're just, regarding that conversation even happened.
Oh.
So you're starting fresh.
Do you have a couple minutes to talk? All right. Well,
Okay, hold on a second. What's different?
Just ask the question and ask permission to have a conversation.
One's a question. The other one's a demand.
not putting her on the defensive.
Not putting it in the sense. So you said, do you have a few minutes to talk? You said,
All right.
okay. So let's see what you can do from here.
How's everything going? Okay.
Come up behind the chair. What do you really feel inside in response to that?
Things are going really well.
Right. And I feel like I'm not asking about it. All right, so there's something different. What feels different to you?
She's concerned. She's caring.
You felt something different. Okay. So this is the secondary communications happen. This is connection. So let's see how you, if you need help, just ask the other parents for help. But you're doing great.
Is there something on your mind? Something bothering you?
People I thought were my friends are saying things.
Like what kind of things?
Like the party that happened last weekend, people are saying that I did something that I didn't do.
What did you say?
I won't talk about it more.
How's mom going to respond to that? I don't want to talk about it.
So I'm thinking, okay, this really.
What's happening inside of you?
I'm worried.
Okay. So your anxiety is not kicking in
Yeah,
again.
it's kicking in.
Okay. So good to monitor that.
Well, you know, you can talk to me about anything.
Not about this stuff.
Okay. Let's do it different. Let's get a different duo. We're going to try one more time. So I need a Laura and a Gertrude. Time is running out. It's 10:20.
All right, Jess.
I have a 12-year-old.
Well, you're just trying to be Gertrude in the moment. All right. All right. Now, I'm gonna try something, and you're gonna, see how this goes. And if you want to use any of this, I'm gonna be your coach. I like the line of, Lauren, you have a few minutes to talk.
Laura, do you have business talk? Sure. Oh, yeah, Lori.
Now, we're gonna try this. We're gonna say, I'm not sure how to talk to you about this. I'm not sure how, I'm uncomfortable bringing this up. Try that.
So, sweetie, something came up, and I'm not quite sure how to talk to you about it, but I really want to talk to you about it.
Stop there. How about behind the chair? Tell us about that line.
It makes you nervous because you're like, what does she know?
All right, so it might be a good idea for Mom to get to the point of what she knows. Good. See, this is important because this is helping us feel inside Laura while we're feeling inside of ourselves. So you're going to have a different conversation. Right? So, what if you say, you know, listen, you're probably not going to like this. But another mom texted me. And about some stuff that's been going on, some rumors that are going on. Do a variation of that. That's in my words exactly.
So it was like really weird, but I got this text from Zoe, and
Zoe's mom has asked you not to use her name, right? Or she doesn't want to know. Zoe doesn't want to know that she's the snitch. And so you're going to have to say,
okay, so I got this text. Wait, I
someone else get the line.
Oh, you might not want to hear this.
But this might be hard to hear.
Yeah, this might be hard to hear. But something came up at the party that something's been going on, and I think you need to know about it.
She knows about it.
I feel like she doesn't know, like maybe she doesn't know that it's like as big a deal as it is.
We're not asking for her side,
Yeah.
for her to tell her.
Ah, hold on a
Do you
second.
want to tell me anything about?
How about this? Let's try this one. So I heard that there's been a lot of stuff going on about a party. What about an invitation? Would you like to talk with me about this?
So I heard there was a lot of stuff going on online about this party on Saturday. Is there anything to talk about?
Well, my friends are saying I did something I didn't do.
Can you pause for a second? What's different about that?
She's not threatened.
She's offering help.
Right.
Offering her to open up
Right.
and have a safe space.
Mom is approaching her with curiosity rather than a predetermined judgment. So when people approach us with curiosity, we tend to be more open than if they come at us with a judgment. Did it feel that way inviting? Okay. So let's see how this might go.
My friends are saying I did something with a boy that we didn't do.
Or what they say.
How about this one? We're just trying things on. Everyone come up and do something. So this is not we're just trying things. We're being, that's going to be awful.
Are you okay?
No, I wouldn't do that. That must be awful.
That must be awful. Yeah. It's not great. How are you handling the situation? Do you need help? Is there anything I can do?
I don't think there's anything you can do, but I'm not sure how to handle my friends.
Now here's the hardest part for parents.
I'm not saying it's none of their business.
What's that?
Like, I haven't heard that yet. Like, well, part of that is, look, no matter what your kid did, I love you, and it's gonna be okay.
Well,
And if you did nothing, that's fine, but it's.
hey, come on up, Miss Gertrude. Gender doesn't matter. Let's hear this.
Secret. Where
And she said it is awful.
Yeah. That must be awful. But no matter what, honey, I love you. I don't care what happened at that party. I love you. And it's none of their business. They don't have any right to talk about you or anything. However, if there's something you need to talk to me about, I'm always here.
How did that come up behind the chair and tell us about it? Okay. How did that feel when you said I love you no matter what?
Well, better, that he's like, you did make a mistake, that you're not gonna get grounded or whatever.
Okay.
You might get grounded.
There's so much you're involved in. Okay, good. You experience that as sport. Okay, good. How do we want to go from here? You can sit back down. So this is where the hardest thing for parents, we want to go into problem solving.
Well,
That's
I
right.
was here one time when I was in high school. I was at a party and I made some mistakes. And, honestly, but
Have a seat. You're getting What might problem solving sound like? And remember, underneath problem solving is often anxiety. What's that sound like?
Well, I was just thinking there's an opening here too to say if something did happen, what? To talk about that. Make sure she's okay with what's happening, make sure she's ready for what's happening, make sure, she has any questions or not to approach it as any kind of, something terrible that happens, that.
Right. But let's hear how problem solving might work. The fixing mind. That's how fixing might go. Yes.
I think as a parent, you might want to say, do you know who started?
Who did this? Who started this? Tell me what the name is. Do you want me to speak to their parents?
No.
We gotta fix this.
The problem where, like,
This isn't right, honey. We gotta fix this now.
kids fix their own problems sometimes.
My point is that when we're anxious, we go into fixing mode. What was that like when I was doing that with you?
I wasn't going to tell you anything.
Sometimes what our kids need most is just to say, I'm here with you. Do you have any ideas of how you want to address this? I'm not sure what's best. How does that?
A lot better, not like you're gonna go call my friend's mom and start yelling at them about what I did.
So you can have, thank you, and thank you for all the volunteers who came out with excellent actors. So we could go much deeper into this. But what are a couple takeaways that you have from watching this?
Ask questions and don't, open the dialogue.
What's the first thing you have to do?
Calm yourself down.
Be empathetic.
We have to connect before we correct. And so we now know from brain science that two brains can help regulate each other. And so you're trying to bring in a calm state to regulate this. If you come in, nervous system high, there's going to be a blow up. You're both going to be reacting from emotional brain, and no one's going to hear each other. Okay, what else?
Sorry, I just have a quick question. Shouldn't the connect happen a long time before the night when Laura happened to do her little thing with Brian? Would that be an ongoing process?
We're constantly going in and out of connection with people we love. We can't be constantly in attunement with people we love. It's not possible. We have our own stuff going on. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a relationship. The relationship's there, but we're constantly, think about your spouse, we're constantly out of it. We're not in tune with them, and we're trying to get in tune, so there's constantly that dance. By checking out and thinking and feeling what she might be going through, that's attunement. What any other takeaways?
I just think along those lines, though, I'm constantly reiterating with my kids, you know you can tell me anything. If you've made a mistake, that's okay. We'll deal with, you know, whatever happens, but you know you can come to me for anything. And I think that's where you were going with it. That should be in motion before a situation like this comes up. And then that's almost a given, you know, like as the conversation unfolds, well, you know, I've always told you you can come to me with anything.
Yeah, generally, you know that.
You know, and I will love you.
Kind of as a hothead parent.
Mhm.
I don't, it's generally just my 12-year-old girl.
Right.
But I do have older kids, 2 older boys and a younger one. I would say I would do everything wrong. I was a parent who would so my takeaway would be come with the curiosity, like you said, but I would have to regulate myself ahead of time. Like,
Absolutely.
I would have to talk to a friend, a neutral person who I trusted, not really have to reveal anything, but just regulate me, help me get to a place where I can come to this person and not do my usual straightforward, straight to the point, which does shut down every conversation I have with my daughter. Literally, I cannot learn my lesson, so it's very difficult to watch.
Well, here's the other thing about parenting.
Of doing it
Right.
indirectly and kind and gentle, and I would need a lot of practice.
Right. So here's the thing about parenting. It's important at some point to really reflect on how you were parented.
Yeah.
Right? Because that affects, in these moments, under stress, we tend to respond the way we were parented.
Nope, the opposite happened. I didn't have any interest. There was no interest, so I didn't really have any laws. But I think the opposites happened.
Right, so you went doing what we call reversal.
No, I'm doing the reversal.
Right.
No one was interested.
You're in reversal mode. I'm going to do the opposite.
I am doing opposite. I'm like straight to the point. There's no confusion on her part. She knows exactly what I'm saying, or not just her. All of my kids, even my husband, everyone I talk to, I'm very direct. There's no, what did she mean?
Yeah. So as someone who's quick to anger myself, I often, if I check in, there's often fear of that. And if I can speak from the place of fear, when we can speak from vulnerability, that tends to draw people closest to us. Right? If I can say, I'm really frightened that you didn't come home until blank, 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 as opposed to,
Where are you?
right,
You know.
right,
You know what the rules are.
right. So that's, again, tuning in what's underneath the anger, which is a protective feeling, and coming at that place. It's a very different, you have different conversations. I've got a couple of questions. Back for him first.
This in part responds to your point about fear, but it also struck me that that same role-playing exercise could have been done 25 years ago without much variation. But the premise of today's talk is to be social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that I got much in terms of social media's effect, other than to say it raises the stakes and increases the fear underlying this.
Right.
Particularly because if the problem solving is meant inevitably to be part of this,
Right.
and if your child is coming to you at one point or another looking for help, I'm not sure they just want empathy. I realize that your point is you won't get anywhere without empathy and trust, and that's a great point. But at some point, there's a need for action. And in the social media world, I think we're all left feeling, well, I can empathize with you because I feel screwed too. I don't understand this. I have no equivalent experience in my youth to fall back on.
Right. So my understanding of the talk today was that this was really focused on communication pieces. And you might be lucky, but I don't know any parents who spoke to their children like this 25 years ago. Maybe you're fortunate. I don't know any parents who talked like this. How many of you had parents talk to you this way? Were you lucky enough? You were. You were. Okay. You're lucky. You're lucky people. That's not how my father related to me. And the parenting style 20, 30 years ago was much more around obedience and discipline. But you might be a lucky one. So,
I'm not sure that was my point.
well, you said this conversation could happen 25 years ago. I'm not sure.
The lesson you were trying to impart
Right.
would have been as valid 25 years ago
Right.
as it is today.
Right.
But the difference is that
Right.
social media's influence on everything that's at stake here today is what we're all looking to understand how we can end.
I guess my point to you is that we don't have answers to it, and part of what we do is learn to be with our children in a different way.
What I like about this is, I think it's a way in the door to have a conversation around social media. But it doesn't, I don't think, I mean, a part of it, I had the same question when I started, right? Like, I'm talking to my daughter, I'm trying to navigate all this. It's like, how much, we personally take a look at screen time that we'll have. I'm kind of off that now as a senior, but, but that's a constant navigation. There's no blueprint on saying, okay, you only get this amount of time, or you should only be on this many apps, or, that's the hard part. We're all unsure about that, but I think what I like about this exercise is a way you can have a conversation to talk about all of those things. That's, but I think you're right in the sense that we're all in this together.
Right.
It's a scary thing. We're all unsure about how much room there should be.
Mhm.
And it's interesting too, because one of the things I had said when I talked to Jerry originally is I would like to get somebody in to talk to parents, because I think all of us, being a parent is a very individual thing in some ways, right? We all kind of have an idea how to do it, but there's no book, there's no blueprint even with that. So now you layer social media on it, and it's like, whoa, how do you navigate this? And then we all see the statistics on depression with teens and things like that, so it's scary, But I do think, and I didn't mean to, I do think the conversations are really the center of all of what we can do with our kids, and it's hard. It's not easy being a parent. This just adds another layer on it.
Yeah, and there's lots of stuff published about setting guidelines. Dinner-free phones, put them away, take breaks on weekends. That's all published. You can look online. Right? So I could have talked about that today, but my understanding was that you needed something different. And I'll tell you one thing, because I work with a lot of adolescents. And you all know what's happening to adolescents, right? They're suffering, if I put it down to one theme, they're suffering from disconnection. And adults are suffering from disconnection. And I work with suicidal teens and adults. And if there's one theme I hear in their lives, it's that they either weren't taught to be connected, and they feel totally alone. So the best thing we can do as a parent is to let our children know that because sometimes there's no answer for anything. Sometimes it's 2 can bear the pain more easily than 1. 3 can bear their pain more easily than 2. Right? We can all share with our kids. These are dopamine delivery devices. We can go on Amazon thinking we're going to buy one thing, and next thing we know, 75 minutes have passed. There's no end to TikTok videos. It's a super stimulus. The brain is craving novelty. Every like we get, a little dopamine hit. Do some more. This is what's happening. And it's happening to adults. And if one thing we can share with them is, I'm not immune to this. I find myself looking something up on YouTube, and next thing I know, 3 hours have passed, and I don't know where they went. I look on Facebook, and I see my friends having these wonderful vacations, this beautiful, curated life. It's a brand. They're producing a brand. we can relate to that. We can relate to envy, upward comparisons. Their life is better than mine. All of us can relate to this. So I think if you can share from there, and your child feels connected to you in whatever conversations, they'll feel less alone and more capable of dealing with some of this stuff. So that's all I have for today. Thanks. Yep.
Maybe you can address it, maybe studies have been done on this and stuff, but I think one of the things that our kids are going through is that nothing leaves them. So a while back, I had read an article, and it was about, when we were in middle school or whatever, some kid tripped and dropped his tray across the cafeteria, and it was laughed at that day. And a couple of days later, it was, for the most part, forgotten. The kid who does that now, by the time he gets on the bus, it's already broadcast because somebody has, recorded it in the cafeteria, and he can't get away from it. And I think, similar with this girl where, something happened, maybe back in our day, it may have gone both ways because I think girls got reputations a lot easier than they do nowadays. But at the same time, she can't get away from this.
Right.
It's just bombarding her. Her friends are talking about it. Her frenemies are talking about it. So are there studies that have been done that, because I think in that way we can't have the empathy that we need for our kids because our world was different. We could, things were easier to shrug off back in the day.
I mean, I'm not so sure our world is different. I remember a time when you went to work, your day ended. It was considered rude if a employer called you at your house. That's gone. There's no end of the workday. There's no end of reading emails. So what we can do is model how do you set boundaries, right? How do you put it away? What can you do instead? What do you do with the stress if you put that away? What's in your control to deal with and what isn't, right? And the thing is, what other people think about us is not in our control. What we think about us is in our control. So helping your child deal with the fact that this that's happening is not within their control and how helpless that feels and how he or she can cope with that. I mean, that's a lesson for all of us.
Exactly what you're talking about. There's a party on Friday night. Back in the day, if you weren't invited to a party, you might have found out it back at school or through a phone call.
Yeah.
Now you see it online and in action to see that you're getting missed out, and hopefully your children have a relationship with you that they can feel comfortable to talk to you about that missing out. But that is a little different.
I mean, I've had employers, I've had patients who will send me an email and expect a response. Of course not. And we get primed dealing with those, of responding to that. Ding, the emails come in. Whoosh. We become like a Pavlovian dog. I got to respond. Right? You can share that, how hard that is. If we're checking our phones every 4 minutes and we put it away and we start feeling something inside, like a mini withdrawal symptom, we can share that. Okay? If we're spending a lot of time on Facebook and doing a lot of comparison, typically it's upward. Their life looks so much better than mine. We can share that. So we're all in the same boat, and I think this is what I think is probably most important. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I had a couple minutes, but I know we're actually over time. So if you need to leave, feel free to leave. I have a few slides, We're actually going to post it on the website. It really centers around some things you can do, resources and websites, and to have that conversation with your children. So I was just going to turn it on. So go ahead. It's 10:45. So it should take 5 minutes, but everyone has things to do. I'm sorry? We're going to put it on the New Canaan Cares website. So, but we also have rack cards as well.
Do you have the remote?
What's that? Yeah. There we go. Okay, so thanks. So this is actually what you heard. This is when we were talking with Dr. Frank. He just was able to put out, 5 things that actually you don't have to take a picture because it's actually on the rack card. Yeah. So these are just, this is everything in a synopsis of what he talked about, and it was so good that we put it here as well. What you do is more important than what you say. Connect before you correct. Approach with curiosity, don't judge. Ask before offering suggestions, and tolerate not having all the answers. I just think this is good parenting advice. In terms of what I was going to quickly talk about with the resources, there's 2 concepts that can frame discussions with your children. It says, sorry about the ESC, it says, become an active user rather than a passive user. So this whole idea is we're served up content. It's really about taking control of your cell phone for yourself and teaching your kids to do that. That's what I think is very important. The Dove Company, which is Unilever, they actually have a great website. It's called the Self-Esteem Project. They have some studies that they've done. It's been going on for 10 years, and they have different campaigns. The one that I really liked, which is recent, is Detox Your Feed campaign. And it's literally going in and taking out the negative things on your feed, any feed. Really using your cell phone for you. And teaching your kids that, I think gets back to what Dr. Frank was talking about, is creating boundaries on social media, just like you do in your life. If someone is a negative influence in your life, are you friends with them anymore? Not really. You should be doing that on your phone as well. The Detox Your Feed, they have on the website, there's tons of information that you can go and look at. They also have podcasts. I listen to a couple. So if you like podcasts, you can listen to it for 45 minutes. You have everything that you need. They even go through the steps of how to detox your feed, so it's spoon-fed, but it's good. Another idea is give yourself permission to snooze, pause, or delete, and teach your kids that too. Have you ever snoozed anybody or snoozed anything that you don't want? See how that makes you feel, and maybe you'll ultimately delete it. I had a child that, so she was watching something on TikTok, and she said to me, "Mommy, I just took TikTok off my phone." I was like, great, So that's something that you can encourage. And then, as you talked about before, with turning off your notifications, everybody says that. I mean, you've seen that everywhere, but it's true. I mean, if you actually, so you don't jump, and it's the conditioned response, Pavlovian. So that's just one concept for having these discussions with your kids. Another idea is the business of social media. Teach that, remind yourself about that and teach that to your children as well. Social media is there. It's a marketing and advertising tool. A lot of it's paid content. Asking your kids, what are they teaching you here? Or what do they want you to buy? So and this is not a one-time conversation. This is a multiple, over time. 1,000 times before your kid understands and listens to you. The constant need for content creation. We all live in a 24-hour news cycle. So this is just where it is. Reminding your kids about the highlight reel. No one wants to show the picture of you getting up in the morning. That's not what we're posting on Facebook or Instagram or what our kids are posting. Personal branding. That's just in our culture now. We're all doing it. Is that really healthy? That's something to, again, another conversation. This is all to spark ideas. Some of these might not land for you, but some of these might. Brain hacking, that's actually a term. You can Google it, and it says brain hacking. Ironically enough, if any of you remember the whistleblower Frances Haugen, she talked about all the bad things that happened, and she testified in Congress. She's actually speaking at the Quick Center November 1st. I have a slide on it as well. But if you're interested in this, I mean, her whole concept now is to get regulation for social media, and that's, if you like lectures, which are all here, maybe that might be something for you. And watch Fake Famous. This is something that people haven't heard about, and I came across it with my kids. It's an HBO documentary, and it's kind of fun. It's different than The Social Dilemma, and it talks about the business of social media. It's a New York Times author that he got 3 people and did a social experiment who would never be famous on social media, and he manipulated their profiles to be able to make them famous, essentially. I'm not going to go through the 2-minute reel, but you'll just see it's fun and it's a good watch.
Do you want to be famous? Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Sign me up. I don't even feel like I want to. I feel like I deserve to.
So anyway, something fun that you can watch with your kids. Byproducts of social media. We can't have a social media talk without body image, just having a slide for that. The Dove Self-Esteem Project, I know I'm hammering this, but they do also have films, they call it, which it's a video on YouTube. But they're really good. There's so many that they have because they've been doing it for so long, but these 3 are really good with your kids. You can actually, it's 2 to 3 minutes, some are 6 minutes, but you can literally watch it with your kid, and they're really powerful. They did a really great job, and then you can have a conversation about it. So that's also something as well, those 3 there. There's not a lot, someone mentioned to me, like, what about boys? There's not a lot of research on boys and body image and how social media is social media is affecting them too. I did find a researcher, Dr. Nagata, is very young. He's out of California. He wrote a book on boys, and it's all about the super bod and how 30 years ago, Superman was tall and lean with muscles, but not big muscles. But now you see all the superheroes now, 30 years later, and this is what our kids are seeing. We're like big, bulky muscles. So. And he's sounding the alarm. He had a article in the San Francisco Chronicle just saying that this is happening to boys too. So it's not really gender specific. They might be getting their information different places. Boys get their information from YouTube. There's a lot of influencers on YouTube, which I kind of knew, but I didn't really know until I started doing the research. So this is just him speaking. I just thought it was a good message.
Having with sons about this often compulsive need, as you talked about, to work out excessively, to have this kind of superhero, action hero bod?
Thanks. I think that's such an important question, and I actually just want to commend you for that thought. I think any conversation actually with boys about some of these pressures to work out excessively or about body image is so important because most boys will never have anyone talk to them about this because it's so underrecognized. Pediatricians, teachers, counselors are mostly trained to look for this in girls. And so I think just even having any conversation about these issues is a really important first step.
So I just think that, talk to your boys, why not? And then finally, influencers are not experts. That's a good thing to hammer home with your kids because that's who they're listening to. And it's just like, where did you hear that? Where did you hear that piece of health advice? Did you hear it on TikTok or health class? Challenge those conversations that you're having with your kids. And then, use social media. That gets back to detox your feed. Use it to your advantage and use it to your kids' advantage. That finding things that make you laugh, relax, find joy. This during the pandemic when the world was shut down, my kids and I started watching animal videos. And I'm just going to end at this because, I don't know, it's kind of cute. laugh every time, right? And we like we go back to that. So that's just something as well. But that's all I had, and we'll have this on the website. And that's why when you look at this rack card, you'll know what I was talking about or what New Canaan Cares is. And this is the kind of stuff that Cares would like to provide for you as well. So, and lastly, I just put that on there if you guys are interested and anyone wants to go. This is Frances Haugen. So thank you.